Party people, party people. Here we go. Namo on the go. It's 2026. I'm in the mix, and we getting ready to kick it off right this year. Uh, this is now Kofi Job. You're on the roof is on fire. We don't need no water, and we're gonna have a good discussion today. We're gonna talk about a lot of different things. You can see some completed work that I have done. Getting ready for a big show this weekend. The Colonizing the Space Take My Soul to the Next Phase. It's going to kick off at Dallas at the African American Museum. Yeah, there's been a few little hiccups. The weather ain't been treating me right for the last week, so I really didn't get out to do a little last minute blitzing. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I got a few people showing up. This year has been a little different than the last year's. I've invited more poets to the event. I have some different artists. Uh, got a few different changes that have gone on this year. Hopefully, we'll do it again. I keep looking at everything that I do and always trying to figure I could do it a little better. This year, I'm on a series of paintings, as you notice in the background, called Bend Reality. High truths and deep fakes. And I'm trying to incorporate my growth, my knowledge, my understanding. I don't know if you can see uh, these paintings too well, but we're going to get into them a little bit a little later. First, we want to talk about what's going on in the world, what's not going on in the world. First, we always got to make a point of the atrocities going on in Israel, which somehow gets ignored by the major media. I tend to watch the news a lot, and I wait to listen to hear when they talk about Gaza and the Palestinian people. And because that is kind of like, for me, if you don't talk about that, what else do you think that is more important? And what I find that they think is more important than that is rarely not. It doesn't even pale in comparison. And so it's always important for me to highlight that every day of my life is because Gaza is kind of like at the bottom of the of the importance of things in this world, and just like the poor people are, and we're not talking about poor people. We're not talking about poverty. We're not talking about changing any of that. We're too busy talking about a bunch of nonsense. And, the people that are, representing us a lot of times think that they're doing it for their own representation, so the spotlight will shine on them. And somehow or another, they're going to make a difference because of that. And, you know, um, I'm not big on the spotlight. I do this channel. I guess I consider it somewhat being in the spotlight. But I do this. Why do I do this? I do this because somehow or another, I think I'm a crop duster. I try to fertilize the ground. Even though that there might be not a lot of people listening, and a lot of people might not pay attention. I feel like I'm cultivating the soil. Okay, bringing out some things in life that sometimes we forget. And then also, I feel like I'm trying to be someone who uh, organizes, try to get people to get more organized, not even politically, economically, but also socially, where we can come together in a different frame of mind, a different thinking of mind. This year, you'll hear a lot of me talking about uh, umoja. That's Umoya. And it's something I came across last year. And it's sort of like this picture you see in the background, but we gonna get into a little bit more of that. But let's talk about what is pressing. What are the major issues of today? We have to talk about Africa. And how Africa is portrayed around the world as being this, you know, uh, underdeveloped countries, but Europeans underdeveloped Africa. Okay, and it's very hard for me to to take that out of context when it comes to the way I think about things, because we live in a world where we're like economic slaves. We still have slavery, but they've changed it to employees now. And we have employers, and that changed. The employer was the master, and now the employee is a slave. And we're still under this economic slavery, where and in a way that we kind of are self-induced. We tend to think that we're free, and that freedom means that we can walk around and get more in debt, and show off what we got, and be happy that we're not living somewhere else. That's a big part of capitalism. Is it's anti-black, and we tend to buy into the parts where it's anti-black. We want to be just like white folk, and that's anti-black, because when it comes to what it means to make that, you have to exploit and oppress a large group of people, and that means everybody is involved in that, and we tend to disassociate ourselves with Africans, because that makes us, we're black, we black Americans, we Afro Americans, and that whole concept of being African American, let me preface all of this. I'm still going through a lot of mental anguish over who I am, and how I am towards my people, because I battle with that. I have kind of let go of a lot of belief systems as a result of trying to center, who I am in this world without it being, corrupted, or, bought, sold out, just buying into a lot of the bullshit, And so I kind of feel like, it's important for us to, recognize, the the abject poverty that's in the world, that we have somehow feel like if we give $1, if we open up some kind of charity event or some type of charity program, we can disassociate ourselves, we can dissolve ourselves of any guilt around it. We can say that somehow or another it had nothing to do with us. But as long as we practicing in capitalism, capitalism is at the core. I was just recently realizing that a general strike changes everything. If we held a general strike and everybody just stopped working, this country would fall apart. And that's all we would have to do. We just go on strike. What is a strike? A strike is we just decide that we're going to march, we're going to protest in some type of way, that we're going to make sure that the powers that be don't get to control our lives anymore. That they're getting to the point where that is really becoming, a necessity for us, because they really don't know what they're doing. These people that are representing us are not representing our liberation, you know, and they're actually, I don't even know if they really realize that's what they're doing. If they're not fully in compliance with the ideas of capitalism, with the ideas of politicians who run for office to represent corporations and not the liberation of the people, then what are we, what's going on? What's happening? What's the point in all of this? What is the point in creating a system that is built off of the masses of the people, but it only benefits a few? And somehow or another, it's logical. It makes sense. We don't see the contradictions. We don't see, like somebody can say, war is peace, or, war, you can have war by having war, you have peace, which is clearly a contradiction, but it makes sense to people. So you can look at what Israel is doing. In, first started off that they were fighting Hamas. Remember that? And Hamas was somebody that they had to, they were the Hamas people were hurting the Palestinian people, and they were hurting Israel, but they were hurting the Palestinian people. And the war ended up being more about getting rid of Palestinian people than it was about getting rid of Hamas, because clearly United States was backing Israel to the hilt. It was putting more bombs and ammunition and equipment into the hands of Israel that would kill off not only the Hamas, but Palestinian people as well. So they have committed a genocide, but they don't want to admit that because that makes them look bad. So the bottom line is we have a country that has been there since 1948 that has tried to not even coexist with the people of Palestine. They've tried to move them out, and they're constantly in the process of moving them out right now, whether it be by death, whether it be by starvation, whether it be by annexation. It doesn't matter. Their whole idea is extraction. Eradicate the population was there to survive. They feel like their greatest threat is the Palestinian people who were there before they were. That's really the issue there. And you take that same scenario and apply it to any place around the world, where there's a group of people who, for their own corporate interests, want to live off of the masses of the people. And so they come up with all kinds of reasons and excuses for why they should do this. Why that makes sense to them. And then they broadcast it. They use the media, they use the religion, they use whatever means necessary to make their case, and present their case to the world, and whether they're guilty or not, because they live in impunity. They don't, regardless if you think they're right or wrong, they're going to do it anyway, because in their minds, they're right, and, right is might. But, there was something about peace through strength, so their necessary a goal in life is just Israel and United States is to dominate. And I really tried to distance myself from any politics that go on in this country that associates us as Americans, because I go back to the Constitution and where they wrote, uh, all men are created equal. And we somehow believe that this is a guiding principle for this country. Well, there was all people are not equal. And that when they said all men, it excluded women, excluded children, excluded animals, excluded the earth, and it made only white men equal to themselves, which they fought like dogs to dominate who was more superior than the other one. And then they decided amongst themselves that they were, even though they're fighting amongst each other, that they're more superior to everybody else any damn way. So, I'm wrestling with these as ideas because so many of us take, these truths to be self-evident. I'm trying to figure out what is evident. What is the evidence? What is making this truth? What is making this? What really actually? How has this deep fake been used for so long? Because it is definitely a lack of creativity amongst other people. Because if if you had the opportunity, which sometimes a lot of us don't, because we're so busy caught up in trying to just make it in this society. But if you had the opportunity to just think about how this makes sense, and you had the time to do it, it wouldn't make sense to you. And the only people I think sometimes that really understand that are the people that don't have to worry about making money in the system. They've created this diabolical insanity to keep their their status or their class in this world, and they have the military might, they have the political, arm to demonstrate that this is, factual when it's, basically fantasy, and we have to be able to be clear on that. We have to be able to recognize when we're being, you know, uh, fooled, and being, uh, uh, you know, um, just basically being fooled, and not being, put in a situation where, we're basically looking at the reality, and I tend to feel that the biggest problem that we have a lot of times is, we don't have a higher truth. We don't have a truth that's higher than the truth that we're living in. And hopefully throughout this next month, this year, excuse me, I'm going to be able to use work that basically helps define that. Helps to define what is truth. What is the ideas behind, uh, the things that have been faking us out. They basically have called us. They basically told us all that we need to know just to keep their position in life. And I'm doing a little something here, so don't mind me trying to keep busy at the same time. But we have to be clear. We have to be 100% clear on what we have been forced into, and had any no real direction, of our own. We weren't guided by any principles that had to do with who we were as a people, but we were used to substantiate, to bolster the ideas of others, and you know, basically that was criminal. And the system has been anti-black since the beginning of time, and we have somehow or another accepted that. You know, we don't look at the racism enough in this system. We don't look at the racism. We don't look at the harm that has done to our people, and not fighting or organizing a system that we could, eradicate that, just bring it to their attention. Because I really don't believe that these you know black politicians are working for the best interests of our people. I've been doing this whole study around the minstrel show. I don't know if any of y'all understand it, but the minstrel show was, I'm gonna break a little bit of it down. The minstrel show was the depiction in the 1830s. White people used to depict their depiction of who we were after these, 200 or 300 years of being enslaved by them. They used to have these shows, and it was actually the first uh, theater or entertainment industry built in this country. But it was a minstrel show where these white people depicted who we were on stage. They dress up in blackface because they couldn't be white and do it, which who they were, but they pasted themselves up as black people to other white people, whether they be in the North or in the South, as who we were as a people. And they would go around making these shows, and they were pretty big. They were really big. I mean, they made a whole lot of successful, went on for years, decades. And then it came to the point where we had been watching these shows along with them, Africans living in here in America, and we decided we could do a better job at what they were doing. Now just think about that. You had a depiction of who we were as a people that was demeaning, that was undermining, erasing who we were, anyway, because it was their interpretation of our culture, you know, expressed under oppression and exploitation. But we decided to take that on. Oh, to clean it up. To make it look a lot more, you know, uh, presentable. I guess representational of who we were as a people. So we took on that role, and it almost became something that we became very proud of because we could add certain different elements that white people just didn't know about us. We were able to do it better. And this led into a lot of other different entertainment later on because it did die out. But I always kind of remember that that same thread of thinking has led to a kind of a neo minstrel show that we live in today. There's like neo colonialism, where we did the same thing in Africa, where Europeans colonized Africa, left the African states to Africans who was going to run the country the same way they did. So that was neo colonialism. So here we didn't have our own state, but we definitely had, oppression by and exploitation by slavery. And so not only did we not learn how they interpreted our, being in slavery, but we decided to teach them also how we felt about it in a kind of a jovial way. It was never serious. It was never really about what we was really going through because white people didn't really know what we was going through in the first place. So for us to take on the ideas of what they thought of what we were going through in the first place is really kind of mind-boggling when you really think about it. But we haven't really rid ourselves of that because a lot of our politicians still practice this idea that somehow or another we're a part of this country by acting like them. We have to depict ourselves in the way they depicted us, to make us, normal or normalize our being in the society. And it I could be wrong. I mean, you could do your research, you could study it yourself. It may not be accurately as I put it, but that's how I see it. And we have to kind of rid ourselves of that nonsense because or we'll get caught up in talking about all the bullshit that's going on today as being it has something to do with us. When in actuality, it's not. They erased who we were. They erased our being, and that's why I'm getting ready to get into this art behind me because this year I'm gonna really be focusing on uh, I don't know if you could say unerasing, or you could reestablish who we've always been. We've never lost. And there's been really a lot of attempts by a lot of us to regain our umoja, our life force, our air, our breath, our spirit, our soul. And so you're going to hear a lot of that from me this year because we've never lost that. We've never lost our umoja, and not emoja like unity. We lost a lot of unity, okay, but this is emoja, and it's UMOYA, and so which is your life force, our breath, our air, our soul, and our being. That is something that they can never take away from us. But we didn't get up and do a show about that once we were free. We, matter of fact, we this has been like 150. Has it been 150? Been maybe around 150 years of liberation, so-called liberation from slavery, but put us in economic slavery. But in that period of time, we were catching hell because the system was anti-black all that time. That we didn't have time to really think about, what it would have been like for all of us to just liberate ourselves out of this type of system. Whether it be in any part of the world. And so as African people, we really, need to focus on that. Um, I'm going to get into this work here in the back and talk to you a little bit about it. First, I want to move this painting over a little bit, though. Can you see them? Okay, that should be good. That should be good. So I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the process of painting these paintings, why I did them, what makes them important. Um, how's that? Okay, so we're gonna talk about this one first. This one is called Encapsulate. And I did it as a result of thinking about what we've been encapsulated in. You know, I talked about the minstrel show. I talked about the neo-minstrel show. Talked about neo-colonialism, colonialism. And there was a being of who we were as a people. I saw this image, somewhat of this image at a professor's office, and it really talked to me. You know, it really captured my attention. It wasn't what I was in the background. It wasn't actually the way the face looked, but there's this markings were on their face, and excuse me, got to blow out some of this nonsense. But anyway, um, it had these markings on the face, and you know, I felt like they were kind of you know, speaking of a you know, group of kin, a group of people, you know, some part of Africa, you know, and so I took that, you know, and then I incorporated, you know, my own, you know, facial kind of ideas and, you know, my own, you know, ideological thinking. And I came up with this idea, and you know, it's not the end of a lot of things, and it's not really the beginning. It kind of sits somewhere in the, you know, in the middle, in the you know, the period of development that I've gone through. And so you see the background. Okay, the background has on the lower end the black and green is kind of code, you know. And I picked up this other word called the Jim code, you know. So you know, we have to get out of the not the you know not the you know not the Jim Crow, but the Jim code, you know. Whereas the algorithms that we think in, uh, you know, benefit still are basically linked to economic slavery, and we don't see that. But anyway, so the economic slavery is kind of trying to be erased with this code. You know, understanding what this code is it being that we live in a Jim code. You know, where if you don't understand that, you won't come up with a different type of you know, algorithm, a different type of, you know, setting for your mind, right? So that's on the lower end, and then on above it is actually a pyramid that's sending off a kind of a light off the top into the universe. In the background is has the universe, you know, the planets, you know, stars, and so the background is actually reflective of once you've gotten over the, you know, the Jim code, you know, you can practice some kind of a, you know, universal code, you know, that's connected us to the universe, right? It's connecting us to who we are as a people, connecting us to the emoja, the life force, you know, the air, the breath, you know, the spirit, the soul that which we live in. And so there you come to the foreground and you see this woman. I don't know if it actually comes across as a woman, but that's what it's supposed to be. It's a woman with these markings on her face, right? And the markings are pretty symmetrical. I tried to, you know, keep them, you know, orderly. You know, they might be a little, you know, they're not totally matching one another, but they're kind of in coordinates with family, you know, with the structure of a people, right? Sort of like there's some people above, there's some people below, there's some people in the middle, you know, the people on sideways, you know. But this woman is actually representing, you know, the Mother Earth, or the beginning of time, you know, the beginning of who we are as a people. And she marks her face as with all of the, you know, the different people that she's populated the world with, right? And her face is very you know, serious, because you know, she's not, you know, playing. This ain't funny, you know. This is just the way it is, and not fancy. You know, it's the facts. You know, this is just the facts. This is just the way it is, you know. And so she's laying that down in this painting. And you know, I took this idea and called it encapsulate, right? So, you know, I've spent, I think, most of my whole life trying to, you know, encapsulate myself in something other than what I lived in, and that's been, difficult. It's been a part of, my my growth, my development. Um, but I think this year I'm going to really try to bring out a lot more of that. What I the bending reality back, like we've been kind of bent, and now I want to bend the reality back to to these high truths, what I just kind of spoke about, and to also show the deep fake. Okay, so we're gonna move on to this next one because this is encapsulate. It's also considered kind of a high truth, but I like the word encapsulate, so I'm gonna keep it like that. All right. So here we go. Here we go. So here's the can I get that? Can I get that? There we go. A little bit of all right. So this one is called deep fake. This is a piece that kind of resonated with me. I saw this picture of somebody who was pushing their face through a laptop. And I thought about that imagery. I thought about, you see in the background it has that gym code, but you notice these pictures were made as like pairs. They were supposed to be one sits on top of the other, like the high truth sits on top of the deep fake. But you see the deep fake is more incorporated with the gym code than the high truth or the encapsulate. But the code in the background here is still that gym code. It's still representing the the code that in this picture it's a man who's a lot more encapsulated in the gym code, right, from the background. But there's a laptop here. There's a computer. Somehow I'm trying to show a kind of a laptop, a computer that's sitting, that's kind of being distorted by him pushing his face into it, right? And and this one also has another name too, and it's called See Africa. So through all of this code, through all of this thinking, when we use these computers, this AI, we have to be able to think about Africa, which I do. And it's amazing how we can reestablish or understand the deep fake, by doing that. Like if we have a something that we're you know making sure that we're everything that we look at is not anti-black, right, or anti-African, then you can gauge what you do, you can gauge what you see, you can gauge what you know, right? And so this face is kind of, you notice that it's white, and you notice these all these paintings have red, black, and green in them, but the white is, when we consider white as African people, it's a sign of unity. Let alone it's not unity in white or white people. It's that it's the white light that is, emanating from us, from our insides. Like we are these African people, and we were the first people to see the light. You know what I'm saying? So, it might be a little something I'm gonna have to dig into more, but the concept is that uh, Africa, usually when I paint Africa, I do the red, black, and green Africas, but I also put Africa as being white, as being that unifying force. that what we are as a people, because white people are not white people. White people are considered white, but white is not, people are not a color. Okay. And that's another kind of concept we need to focus on, is that Europeans are Europeans continentally. They are built, they are their land, their cultural base. Their culture was derived from the land that they lived upon, right? African people, which is a name that was given to us too by these Europeans, to define who we were, was there was what a culture of people that were defined broader than the ideas of the word African or Africa, but it was the people, it was the land base, right? And yes, we can associate ourselves with being black, and white people can associate themselves with being white, but they're still just colors. They're not the essence of who we are as a people. You see, when I said emoji, I said a life force. I said a air, a breath, a soul, a spirit. There's nothing in that has to do with a color. You can depict it in a certain way, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's because you put it in those colors, that's what it is. Uh, and if we're going to go to theories of color and the theories of light, we probably we'd understand that light is you know infraction off of a prism, our eyes, and then that eye actually sees color. And I'm not being 100% sure on all of that, but that's how I interpret it, right? But I say that to say all that the when if you were sitting in front of a laptop and you were or in front of any kind of computer screen and you don't see Africa, then you automatically know that there's something wrong. You automatically know that you're focusing on something that you shouldn't be focusing on, and that is the essence of what this painting is trying to say, is that um, whenever we sit in front of this algorithm that we're around, you notice that the algorithm, if you can look real closely, the algorithm is even on the laptop screen, but it's in red and it's kind of a little more blurry or a little more jangled, and because I was trying to incorporate the idea that uh, we can't escape our reality unless we push something out of it, right? Push our air, our breath, our eyes, out of what we've normally been able to accept and kind of perceive. And so this is going. These were two paintings that I started this year, and they're going to be about maybe 6 or 7 more, probably 8 more paintings that I'm going to take on this idea. A lot of them are going to be um, more political, more, you know, I have some in the background. I'll probably will be on the next month that I'll be starting. These are pretty much finished. There might be some little touch ups that I want to do, but I was really happy with the shading. I did a little difference with the encapsulate. I did a little different, something different, because I have to understand that there's a lot of people out there that are trying to you know, you know, keep up with the minstrel show, keep up with the neo minstrel show. And then some of them things, I feel like I had to kind of, you know, incorporate, because, there are techniques that are out there in the art world that are just phenomenal. I mean, I'm hands down, there's a whole lot more phenomenal artists than I am. And I'm not trying to be, in the spotlight, to be honest. But I have to say that the ones that are in the spotlight, they're in there for a good reason. Okay, because they put some time and effort into what they're created, and they are some miraculous work compared to what I do. And so I'm hands down. I love to look at other people's artwork. I love to study what they do. But I also know sometimes that they didn't see Africa. They weren't even looking at Africa when they did it, and that's not that's a criticism, but that's not really a I understand our people. I love my people. I understand where we've been through. I understand what we're going through. And so I have to kind of, not look at it with, kind of rose colored glasses. like it's, oh, this is so beautiful, wow, and then start saying, oh, I want to do something like that. No, I don't really want to do nothing like that. But some of those little technique skills, some of the little things like, this one, it was the outlining of the face, was something that I, saw in a lot of work. And I thought like I need to incorporate some of that. So there's other things that I've done that have taken other people's techniques, and their approach, and try to incorporate that into what I do. And I think that helps in some ways. The pattern in the background of the ones and zeros. You can't really see it close, but it is a code, and uh, I saw a lot of work that uses patterns in the background of their pieces, and that took a lot of work. I mean, to be honest, that wasn't easy putting all them little O's and ones on there, and and I don't know if I'm gonna continue to do some work like that, but I mean, it was also exercise. It can help me to, see what other people do, and how they approach work. And so I like that. But this one, getting back to this one, so you have this you know, male head pushing his head into the screen. But just like in the other, these paintings are supposed to kind of complement each other. So there's a pieces of each one of them in each painting. There's like a little pyramid. There's a little universe. There's a little white, kind of thing. They're both African people. But they're just I use them in a different. I didn't come up with them similar, like on the same day, or as an incorporated model. But I have some paintings that I did like 10 years ago that I have hanging on my wall. So I wanted to incorporate these paintings into taking those down and putting these up. And so that was it. It's part of the reasoning. They were the first two paintings that I chose to do this year, in 2020, in the mix in 2026. So I feel like I wanted to, you know, I always feel like I'm growing, and developing from what I did in the past. And so these are kind of an incorporation of that, trying to, take it to the next phase, decolonize my space, and take it to the next phase, and bend reality, and, get out that deep fake, and raise them high truths. And so, as an artist, you really have to, you know, come up with an idea. You have to think. You have to think. Um, you have to think of an idea. And then you have to believe in that idea. And you have to keep thinking about that idea, no matter how crazy it is, because sometimes I really be thinking some of my ideas are kind of crazy. And you know, uh, and I also kind of feel like you know, uh, I never really felt they were delusional though. I think that I grounded them in always in something, in some kind of reality. I had to check. I had did a lot of reading. And so I did a lot of reading and research to check on if my ideas were sound. And then I bounced them off a lot of people's heads. I talked to them about to a lot of people about what I think and what I believe. And that's important too, because as much as I like to believe that I'm always right, I know that I'm wrong, half of the time. And so I need to have people that I can trust around me that are going to showing some love, and I can get some kind of feedback from. I can develop my thought patterns better. And so as an artist, you need criticism. you know uh I should do the whole little talk about that. But criticism, I, as much as I don't like showing my work, once I do show my work, I want to ask people, what do you think? What do you think about it? What do you see? And then half the time they see exactly what I wanted them to see, because that's what I was trying to do. You know, the things that they wanted me to do, sometimes I don't want to do because they saw it. And if you can see what you think I should have done, then you saw what I did. And I think that's, as an artist, we have to be real clear on that, is I didn't want to, do somebody else's work. I wanted to do my own work. And my own work required me to see what I was doing in a different way. And so, like I said, that's important, to always, do the work that represents you, that represents you to the fullest, that you can. I'm getting looking at my show. Got some people showing up, some people showing up. So it's gonna be good. We're gonna have some more people popping in. So y'all got to be there. If you can't be there, you're gonna miss out. We're gonna have some great artists. A lot of the artists that I invited uh, to this show are they don't do the work I do. And that was important. I don't think the work that I do is any different than somebody else's work. It's just the work that I do, and they do something different. And I think that's important. You might judge it differently, and that's you. But I'm not judging it differently. Matter of fact, I want some contrast. I don't want people to do what I'm doing. I don't want you to copy what I'm doing. That's not creative enough for me. Create your own vision. I have always, you know, when I finally decided I was going to be an artist, after years of, doing it, uh, I got about 17, 18 years old. I got accepted to go to college. Everybody was asking what I was going to do, you know. And, at the time, I think I was telling people, "Oh, I want to be an account executive. I want to work in advertisement firms and come up with all these great ideas to sell product." And I got out of that real quick, once I started realizing the world that I was living in. But I never gave up the idea of not being an artist, um, which was not encouraged, and I understood why it wasn't encouraged, because to be an artist, sometimes you have to, accept certain things, certain realities, which in a lot of ways I wasn't willing to accept neither. I wanted to be, a big time artist. I want to be a great artist, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that if I was poor or if I was trying to make it, as a, in an anti-black world, So, I joined the fire department. I see me wearing this. I usually put on a little something a little more conscious when I put on these shows, but you see, I'm still wearing this anti-black stuff on right now because I forgot. And I just realized it. But yeah, I would have thrown on something. Matter of fact, I had a nice shirt I could have thrown on, but but I just for the public, But I mean, you notice you go back and look at all these videos. I made sure of wearing something conscious. You didn't see me wearing no Nike gear, okay? But there's a whole story behind that too, and you know, uh, I want you all to be aware of that, that aspect of what I do too, because it's important for me to you know to incorporate these 40, you know, shoot, I would say, yeah, 40 to 50 years of art that I've done in my life, into what I'm doing now. And I always appreciate artists that don't give up, just continue to keep working, continue to keep doing it. This is, even though you may not see it in this is a result of that. Okay. This is a result of believing in myself, never giving up. Reason why I'm doing these little, I'm not expecting a lot of folks to pop in right now, but I'm writing a documentary about all of this by these little videos I've done. This is going on. I think is this the second year? Yeah, maybe I think almost a third year that I've been doing this. But I had to go back and look how many I've done. But I know all last year, 2025, I did this. But I'm thinking 2024 I started. So who knows? But definitely, I'm coming around to the end. I'm trying to find some things to say. So, uh, uh, you know, what this year is going to be more focused on is uh, this convergence of my thoughts. The ideas that have you know like I'm doing this whole new series where I'm taking paintings that I did in '86. Matter of fact, these paintings that you see behind me, they're going to be part of that too. But I'm taking paintings that I did back in '86. I redrew them, and then I'm going to make them digital. And that's been an exercise, because when I started this journey of social justice work, which is these are not, these kind of can maybe be considered somewhat social justice work. Um, uh, they were before computers, or actually, like I just 85, 95, I guess was when the first computer kind of came out. So we're talking about '86. Then it was before this, whole computerized stuff, all the stuff I learned about working on computers. So, but the ideas were kind of simple. They were not complex. So I'm able to take the drawings and redo them in Illustrator and, you know, bring them out, you know, in a more of a contemporary, form, and I mean, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, if you go to AfricaOnTheMove.com right now, you'll see the first one that I did, and it's called uh, "Nothing Can Come Between Us," and it's actually taken from a earlier work that was done in '86, '85, '87, somewhere around there, and I was, now it's 26. So, you're talking about like, what's that, 86, 96, to 2006, 2016, 2026. That's 40 years, you know, of work, and that's not even counting my high school or, elementary school work. But, so I've been doing this for quite a while, but, to take the work that I did 40 years ago and remix it, in 26, has been really important and really big. But you got to have that kind of work to do that kind of work, So I encourage people to don't give up on what they do. Like, yeah, I say, well, I used to paint, I used to draw. Well, take them old drawings out. For one, I didn't want to stop. I knew that was a, I got volumes of drawings because I didn't want to stop. I didn't do a lot of painting, but by now it's been about 10 years since I've gotten back into painting. And so I feel good about that. I feel good about where I'm at now with painting, um, which I kind of lost a little bit. I lost um, a little skill in that because I didn't do it. I just was drawing and I didn't find the time. I didn't find the effort. I just, you know, uh, had other things to do, being a creative person, I think I just put my creativity in doing other things. Somebody told me a couple of weeks ago that I gave a paint party, and it was really very good during Kwanzaa. I had it in two different places. It was a really good event, but I had them using markers, pens, and somebody said, "Well, that ain't paint." And I said, wait a minute now, what defines paint? I mean, this is that whole anti-black, this whole colonizing thinking, I had to somehow or another pull out a paintbrush. Everybody had to have a paintbrush. Everybody had to have a little paint to paint on, which is a form of painting. I acknowledge that. But that didn't mean that using a marker is not painting, you know. And I may not be 100% on that neither, but painting is a process of, for me, is a process of putting color on something. Okay, uh, you can paint in black and white too, but and I've done that. But I like to paint in color. I don't spend a lot of time drawing in color. And maybe that could be considered a painting too. But painting my drawings, with colored pencils, and I don't know. I have to go back and look at what a definition of painting is because I really kind of was a little thrown off by that. As a matter of fact, it made me think, am I painting when I use these markers? But they were easier. I mean, they were simpler to clean up. They were, prints that I made of some of my work, and people got really creative with them. So I mean, I hopefully they hold on to them. There's something that they'll remember that they did. They were all on the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and I love the little. I came up with that was another thing. I've been practicing Kwanzaa for so long. Um, I felt like I could do my own interpretation of the principle in a picture. And so these are pictures I've done, and I use them for cards, calendars, all kinds of different things, and coloring books. And I think that uh, having, I think we're all artists. Let me put it like that. I think that we all have an ability to create. Now, do we all choose to do that? No. And once we do choose to create, do we like what we've created? No. Um, but that doesn't mean that you didn't do it. You didn't create it. It wasn't something. And I think that developing that, if you look at my work and you think, oh, you can do it better, that's fine. I mean, I'm not here to compete. A lot of people think I am, but I'm not. I'm not here to compete with you. I'm here to do my thing, the best that I can to the best of my ability. And I hope that you can too. I hope whatever you choose to do in life, you take it to the fullest, and you don't walk away from it. You stay connected to it. You stay involved with it. This is a result of that. Okay. Just years of study, years of practice, years of playing, and enjoying it, and some people think I'm going to quit, like somehow or another, my work is bent off of success, and uh, the success was completing the work, for me, the success was, achieving, what I set out to do. So, I think there's different levels to all of this, and you have to be kind of 100% in what you do, or you're gonna only put I don't half-ass nothing. I don't put in 50%, 25% on stuff. I tend to if you know me, I'm the type of person that puts everything into it. I'm a whole being, and but yeah, so we coming to the end of this. I've been talking for quite a while, and I got it all out. I think I got all out that I was planning on getting out. Stay tuned. Next month I'm gonna be on some new work, and you'll see that in the background. Some smaller pieces, but they're both very impactful, and hopefully I can get a chance to explain those to you in some detail, and talk about some of what it takes to just be a creative, and what you are, and that you can be if you want to be, and it might not be through paint or drawing. It just might be through your intellectual endeavor, whatever it is. And so I want y'all to stay ready, stay ready for that revolution. You never know what's gonna happen. It ain't gonna be televised. It ain't gonna pop up on your screen. Okay, it's gonna pop up, in protest. It's gonna pop up in some marching, but it ain't gonna pop up on your screen. It's gonna be you have to get organized, and be ready, because you might have to give up some things too. Some things you've been holding on to. Kimmy coming over here to tell you something. Kimmy, tell people something. Tell people this is Africa on the move. This is Africa on the move. Can you see Kimmy? Kimmy, can you? You can't see Kimmy, but this is Africa on the move. You're listening to the roof. The roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let that mother burn, baby, burn. So till the next time, y'all stay in love and in peace, and don't mix up war and peace. Okay, they're not the same. Okay, that's a contradiction. But let's try to win this revolution. Okay, let's look for the victories. Okay, and we don't need no water. Don't put this thing out. Let that thing burn. Okay, this is Namo Kofi Joe. You're listening to You're listening to The Roof is on Fire. Go to africaonthemove.com. Hopefully you can be there this weekend at the Decolonizing the Space. You can find that on Eventbrite. And Forward ever, backwards never. All my socials on Awakening Kinship. Forward ever, backwards never.